So welcome everybody. My name is Alana Yim. I'm the Chief Communications Officer at Canadian Strategy Group and am your facilitator and moderator for today. So welcome to the ARMA's EPR webinar series. This is the third one. And it's fantastic as we're seeing the numbers grow, and I think that the number of stakeholders and communities and different stakeholders that are joining. So before I start, though, I will start with a land acknowledgement. ARMA works with Albertans from all areas of our province and acknowledges the Indigenous peoples who lived among and traveled through the land in the area currently known as Alberta. The relationship that peoples of Treaty 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10, Alberta's Métis and Inuit people have with the land is founded on a deep respect for the environment. This connection forms the foundation of our responsibility and vision of inspiring a future without waste. Before I turn it over to the ARMA EPR team, just a few housekeeping items to go over. We're mindful and respectful of everyone's time. Registrants will notice that your audio has been turned off. We ask that you use the Q&A function to submit questions you may have and encourage you to do so as they come to mind. There's several of us monitoring the Q&A coming in. If the team doesn't get to your questions, know that we are recording and we're capturing them as we go, and the team will circle back if you do find that your question wasn't addressed. But we're monitoring it and capturing it all. We also have some subject matter experts with us today who are also monitoring the Q&A and working together behind the scenes to answer the questions that will be coming in. That is Kim Tyke-Roby from the Manager of Compliance with ARMA, Annie Lamb, Change Lead, and then we have Peter Hargreave, ARMA's consultant at Policy Integrity, and Nahani Falens, ARMA's legal consultant. As mentioned, if your question isn't addressed today, we will definitely be following up. Lastly, this webinar series, just a reminder to everybody that it is recorded and we'll be making it available on the ARMA website after for any of your colleagues who may want to watch it later, or for those that were not able to join, but it'll be archived and available publicly. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Ed Guggenheimer, CEO of ARMA. Over to you, Ed.
Awesome. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us at our webinar. I guess we've had a few of these, and there'll be a few more, I'm sure, before this process is done. But I want to thank everyone for being here. Again, I'm the CEO of the Alberta Cycling Management Authority. Been here for about 5 years, and really looking forward to moving ahead with this new EPR framework in this province with respect to some of the two new programs that we're moving forward with. So just a brief overview of what we're going to be discussing today. So a brief introduction. We're going to be talking a little bit about the EPR framework, some of our specific regulatory requirements. Alberta is going to be different than other provinces, so there are nuances that are different here. We'll give you a walkthrough of our system, maybe some of the next steps, and then open it up for questions from all of you later on. So basically, today's webinar is going to focus in on producer stakeholder group. That's you folks predominantly on the line, and your role in the EPR framework, your obligation to register with ARMA Connect, our system, and to fulfill your regulatory obligations in Alberta. We'll go through the registration procedure and how to delegate supply and management reporting to producer responsible organizations, PROs in this instance. We're going to be talking about fee methodology and the policy that's currently under development. Actually, I should back up here. We're actually working on the fee methodology, which is currently under development. So we're probably going to stay away from that conversation today, as it's still a work in progress. And we'll have more details for you as we undergo the consultation period over the next few months. Any questions regarding specific products, whether they're considered a designated material, may be directed to our general email at EPR@albertarecycling.ca. We think this is probably not the forum to get into that grave level of detail. Next slide, please. So for those of you who don't know, ARMA has managed stewardship programs for over 30 years. I think we're at 32 at this point in time. And collectively, We manage the electronics program, the paint program, the tires program, the used oil program, and we do some work in the Northwest Territories and the Yukon. We have about 11.6 million electronics recycled, and yes, we can actually get to that number. We've had about 33.9 million liters of paint since 2008. We've got almost 145 million tires since 1992 and over 2 billion liters of used oil since 1997. And used oil is a new program, predominantly for our organization, as we took it over about 4 years ago. So producers flying designated PPP or HS materials are required to register with ARMA as a producer. If a producer is already a supplier reporting in Alberta's stewardship programs, i.e. the electronics, paint, tires, or used oil program, you'll be able to conveniently log in and use that same portal registry account in the ARMA Connect portal to add new registrations for PPP or HSP material streams. Being registered with ARMA allows a supplier to report in any one of ARMA's stewardship programs, again, paint, tires, used oil, electronics. And it is independent of the EPR related obligation to register and report if you're also in PPP or HSP. They're separate regulations, so we have a bright line that we follow inside our software. There's no overlap of designated materials between stewardship programs and EPR frameworks in Alberta. And a producer hierarchy has been set up in the regulation as follows. So the producer is the brand holder of a designated material. And if the brand holder is a resident in Canada, if there's no brand holder resident in Canada, then the importer of the designated material, if the importer is resident in Alberta, is the producer. If there's no brand holder resident in Canada, nor importer resident in Alberta, then the producer is the retailer who supplied the designated material into the consumer. Where a producer is not a wholly operated part of a franchise, where a producer is a business operated wholly as a franchise, a producer is also a franchisor if that franchisor has franchisees that are resident in Alberta. If an importer added a designated material to a product for transport for other purposes, the producer of the added designated material is an importer of the product, if the importer is resident in Alberta, or if there is no person described in a resident who supplied the product to the consumer. The overarching goal of this highest entity in the hierarchy that pays into the system rather than everyone along the supply chain. Joining a pro that operates in Alberta doesn't mean the producer is registered in Alberta. Producers may use the services of a pro to fulfill the regulatory obligations in Alberta on behalf of, but must still register directly with ARMA. The Alberta regulation ultimately puts the responsibility on the producer and not the pro. Next slide, please. The EPR regulation went into effect in Alberta last November, with ARMA being established as the oversight body. For the past year, ARMA has been diligently working on the foundational elements necessary to operationalize the EPR system in Alberta, including the drafting of EPR bylaws. We did a lot of that, and the agreement we have with administration and oversight with the Ministry of Alberta. Design and development of the EPR registry has also been underway in tandem, and we are currently in the process of engaging a diverse group of stakeholders to enhance the policy and development with the goal of a smooth system implementation. So that's why you're here. The roles associated with EPR are very different from ARMA's stewardship programs, and there's an agreement on administrative oversight that sort of breaks down our roles versus government. This slide sort of gives you a summarization of those roles. The government of Alberta determines the goals, outcomes, and directions related to designated materials. They maintain the EPR framework and the policy direction to support the intended outcomes. They oversee the performance of our organization, ARMA, and our oversight mandate. They engage with us on matters related to the agreement, the act, or the regulation, and they actually enforce contraventions against the act and or regulation. On the flip side, ARMA, as an oversight authority, includes developing and maintaining those bylaws, the operational policies that align with government framework to support the implementation and ongoing operation of EPR systems. We are here to implement policies and procedures and deliver a level playing field that helps ensure compliance. We're here to develop and maintain that registry system, ARMA Connect, to make sure our reporting and registration works properly. We're here to engage with impacted stakeholders with a focus on oversight operations and outcomes related to the designated material. We're actually here to educate and inform impacted stakeholders like you on your roles, responsibilities within the system through strategic communication and distribution of information. We're also here to establish an escalating measure to compel compliance from producers, pros, and anyone involved in the system. And we're here to actually exhaust all available administrative procedures before referring cases to the ministry. That's the nuclear resort, and we don't want to go down that road. We're here to design appropriate performance measures and assess the performance of the EPR system within a framework of continuous improvement to achieve higher and better outcomes over time. We're also here to report on the overall health of the system against outcomes and regulation, and to keep the ministry informed of issues that may concern government with respect to the designated materials. So, as we work to stand up EPR oversight body, our organization, in Alberta's EPR framework, we continue to consider the approaches that happen in Ontario and BC and other jurisdictions to help sort of shape an Alberta-made solution that works for the nuances of the Alberta industry and the recycling landscape. We're always committed to consulting and working with a broad range of stakeholders, including producers here today, producer responsible organizations, processing facilities, and communities. We're confident that we can create a system that works smooth, achieve the EPR implementation process in such a way that it feels seamless. And our goal is to minimize the amount of red tape, unnecessary processes. We've made some significant changes to how producers interact with our system, and we believe that was a really, really good choice, and also a red tape reduction for producers in the system. Our goal is to minimize that red tape, increase the opportunities for innovation. We want to enhance the percentages across the province from a recycling standpoint, and we want to help build Alberta's circular economy. We're trying to keep this environment for our future generations here in the province. So I think with that, I'd probably pass it over to Gabby to start having a conversation about what oversight looks like.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ed. My name is Gabrielle Betts, and I'm the Executive Director of Extended Producer Responsibility here at ARMA. And so, as Ed mentioned, working with the Government of Alberta, we are supporting a government-made EPR framework that will help us and our partners do even more to reduce waste and make our province a more attractive place for investors. As mentioned, we're really focused on the two streams. So the first is the single-use products, packaging, and paper products. And you'll hear us refer to this as PPP. And it is specifically from the residential sector, as well as the hazardous and special products area as well. And we'll go through that more in the presentation today. So if we go to the next slide. Now, there are 4 key stakeholder groups in the EPR system, and I'll go through each one of them with you now. So the first group, of course, is the communities. As defined in the regulation, this includes cities, towns, villages, municipal districts, specialized municipalities, improvement districts as per the Municipal Government Act, special areas as per the Special Areas Act, settlements as per the Métis Settlements Act, and Indian reserves. Communities it's requested that communities provide us with current services for PPP and HSP materials. So this includes information such as the existence of recycling programs, curbside pickups, and the range of materials that are currently accepted for recycling. Now, in terms of the outreach efforts that ARMA has been doing, we've really enjoyed the opportunity to connect with diverse communities across Alberta. This has really been a priority for us to make sure that the change goes as well as possible. So please connect with us over email, give us a call, or invite us out to talk to your community group if you think it will be helpful. We always like connecting. The second stakeholder group is, of course, the producer group. And so that's the primary audience of our webinar today. Registration opened for this group on November 27th, 2023. And as most of you will know, in this new EPR system, the responsibilities go beyond manufacturing and selling. So now producers are responsible for product lifecycle management, including post-consumer stages. And the registration system has designed to be as simple and user-friendly as possible for producers. And my colleague Victor will take us through the registration process a little bit later in this webinar. The third stakeholder group is the pros. So Ed mentioned pros. So you'll hear us use this acronym, and it stands for Producer Responsibility Organizations. Their registration started on October 23rd. And this time frame and the timeframes that we have set out really allow for us to focus on each stakeholder group throughout the registration process and to make sure all of you are supported. Now, the fourth stakeholder group is the processing facilities. Their registration opened on October 16th, and they handle the receipt, recycling, downcycling, treatment, disposal, and/or export of designated materials outside of Alberta. Processing facilities must not have affiliations with pros. And in terms of the registration data that's requested, we're asking them to provide basic information regarding the material types, processing methods, location, and capacity of their facilities. We'll go to the next slide. Now, each of these four stakeholders involved within Alberta's EPR system have distinct responsibilities. In terms of communities, to be part of Alberta's EPR system, communities need to register with the Alberta Recycling Management Authority. Community registration by December 31st, 2023, so it's fast approaching, guarantees eligibility for EPR recycling services starting April 1st, 2025. Communities can still register after this date, but their recycling services will not commence until at least October 1st, 2026. So we're really encouraging all communities who are interested to learn more about EPR and start talking with a pro to please register before December 31st, 2023. And if you have any questions or know of a community that has questions, please have them reach out directly to our EPR team here at ARMA. We're really happy to connect and answer any questions, as well as assist with the registration form. And on that note, if you are encountering any barriers in terms of the information that we've requested on the registration form, please just fill it out to the best of your ability and submit it into the system. Our EPR team can always touch base with you and make sure that it's filled out fully. But the most important thing is that if you're interested in registering before December 31st, that you're able to do so. Now, in terms of producers, any producers who introduce single-use products, packaging, and paper, or hazardous and special products, materials into Alberta, are required to register with ARMA and engage with the province's EPR program. Producers can opt into the common collection system or may propose an alternative system, which must receive ARMA's approval. Producers must submit annual supply and management reports, and the inaugural report is due on June 30th, 2024, covering all materials supplied in the 2022 and 2023 calendar year. In terms of pros who are looking to operate within Alberta's EPR system, they must register with ARMA as well. They are appointed by producers to manage and report on supply and management activities on their behalf. And finally, processing facilities must register with ARMA in order to participate in Alberta's EPR system. Next slide, please. So we are working very hard to harmonize Alberta's framework with other Canadian jurisdictions to ensure a consistent approach for producers wherever possible. We recognize the importance of this as it simplifies compliance for producers, but also fortifies our collective efforts towards a sustainable future. Having said that, we do also want to take into account characteristics that are unique to our province here in Alberta. These distinctions are not meant to be roadblocks, but rather opportunities for innovation within our EPR system to meet the desired outcomes for the Alberta landscape. Over the next few slides, we will outline some of these differences across the two programs. We will start with the producer exemptions in PPP. PPP producers may be exempt from registration and/or reporting if they meet certain criteria for exemption. Please note that there are no producer exemptions for HSP. One criteria is organizations with charitable status as defined in the Charitable Fundraising Act. These organizations are exempt and have no obligations to register. The other criteria is a revenue threshold of 1.5 million based on a producer's annual gross revenue in Alberta. And the last criteria is a material threshold where a producer's revenue is over 1.5 million, but they are under all material thresholds. We will take a closer look at these thresholds on the next slides. A PPP producer is exempt from the requirements of the EPR regulation and is not obligated to pay program fees or participate in the common collection system if that PPP producer has an annual gross revenue in Alberta less than $1,500,000. This consideration ensures that smaller businesses, which form the backbone of our economy, are not overburdened while still being part of the environmental stewardship conversation. While they are not required to register, they would still log in to the registry to document their exemption, and they must keep financial records that demonstrate they are under the revenue threshold if an inspection is to occur. In order to determine their revenue, producers should use their gross revenue for the previous calendar year. So if a producer is in the process of registering between now and March 1st, 2024, the base year to determine revenue threshold exemption is the calendar year of 2022. Please use the gross revenue in the province of Alberta, as revenue for designated materials should not be isolated. This criteria is related to registration and determining potential exemption from some but not all producer requirements. And producers that are below the revenue exception are still required to log into the portal to document their status and keep financial records as evidence that they meet the exemption criteria in case an audit is to occur. Next slide, please. Now, for each PPP material type, there is a weight threshold for the category of designated material generated. So the weight thresholds for PPP in the Alberta EPR system are, for each calendar year, 2 tons of paper, 2 tons of rigid plastic, 2 tons of flexible plastic, 1 ton of glass, and 1 ton of metal. To be considered exempt under this criteria, a producer would need to be under all material threshold levels. Again, these producers will be required to register with ARMA and provide supply report annually, but they will not be required to pay program fees or participate in the common collection system. If a producer's revenue is greater than the threshold and their supply of designated materials into Alberta is over the material weight exemption threshold on any material category, then they are an eligible producer subject to registration, reporting, fees, as well as collection. Next slide. As we mentioned in the previous slide, within the PPP stream, there is a material exemption. A PPP producer is considered exempt from the requirements of the EPR regulation if that PPP producer has an annual gross revenue in Alberta greater than $1,005,000, but supplies for residential use in Alberta less than each of the amounts listed for the materials discussed. The PPP producer must be below each of the material thresholds in order to be considered exempt. And when determining revenue at the time of registration, a producer should use calendar 2022 as the base year. The revenue amount to be used is the overall gross revenue for the producer in Alberta. It is not just the revenue for the designated material in the province. And a PPP producer that meets the criteria is obligated to register with ARMA and must submit an annual supply report. They are exempt from oversight fees, collection system participation, and annual material management reporting. Now we'll go to the next slide. It's really important to note that some mid-sized and all larger communities within Alberta will surpass the revenue threshold, necessitating registration as a producer under the EPR program. So any mid-sized community will want to consider this, and the larger communities will know this, but they are considered a producer. So paper will be the principal material that communities need to track. This includes a variety of paper-based communications such as assessment and tax notices, utility bills, and other mailed information that are distributed to residents within their community. We do recognize the complexity involved in gathering supply data from across different community services and business areas within communities. To assist with this challenge, ARMA is gearing up to provide dedicated support services starting in the new year. These resources will help communities determine their specific producer obligations and manage the tracking of paper materials effectively. Additionally, our support will extend to navigating the post-registration phase, ensuring that communities are well supported throughout this important transition. So what this will look like will be a series of webinars and/or workshops to help support communities as we move forward. And on that note, if you ever require support and you are a community, please do reach out to us at our email address. Just let us know how we can support you, and we're always happy to do so and appreciate your feedback. And now with that, I'll pass the presentation over to Victor Dong, who is our Director of EPR Operations here at ARMA, and he will take you through the producer registration process.
Thank you so much, Gabby, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be here to take you through the registration process and show you what our registry looks like. So under the EPR framework, producers will, of course, play a central and proactive role in managing the environmental impact of their products throughout the entire life cycle. So the responsibility of producers will go beyond that simple manufacturing and selling of the products, and they are accountable for the management of the product at the end of their useful life. The primary focus of the registration process really allows the producers to delegate the responsibility to a pro and provide us some simple information at the time of registration. If producers choose to delegate the authority to a pro, then the pro will ensure that they meet the reporting and verification obligations for that producer, which are scheduled for April 1st, 2024 for the verification plan, and June 30th, 2024 for the reporting obligations. There is no deadline for a producer to decide on when whether they want to work with a pro or not, nor selecting which pro they can work with. However, there is a hard deadline for the submission of a verification plan, which is that April 1st, 2024 date for PPP, and October 1st, 2024 for HSP. So to comply with this deadline, a producer may join a pro that's submitting a verification plan for a common collection system, or they can submit their own alternative collection plan, or they can indicate intent to pay into the common collection system. If a producer has decided to work with a pro, delegation relationship must be documented within our registry portal through your producer accounts. And this step is separate from the steps you may need to sign up with a pro on their portal or website or whatever that process looks like with a specific pro. So in terms of deciding to use a pro, pros can perform the supply reporting on your behalf. They can do the management reporting on your behalf, and you can opt into a common collection system through a pro as well. So for producers, the registration process is very straightforward, and we've tried to simplify it as much as possible. What you really need is an ARMA Connect account. If you don't already have one through our stewardship programs, we need a couple fields, as you'll see in the next few slides. And you can decide at the time of registration whether you want to delegate responsibility to a pro. And that's really all the information we need for the initial registration. Then, depending on your preference, there are some additional steps you can do, such as opting in to work with a pro at a later time. If you do decide to work with the pro, you will need to negotiate an agreement with the pro to finalize what that delegation pieces involve. The pro will then upload the signed agreement or an attestation into our system as a two-way confirmation of the delegation. If you as a producer do not choose to work with a pro, then you will need to complete your own verification plan for April 1st, 2024, and ensure that supply report for both 2022 and 2023 is submitted by June 30th of 2024. So over the next couple slides, we'll kind of show you a few snippets of what a registration system look like. So once you create an ARMA Connect account, you will be able to see the extended producer responsibility programs that you can register for. So for both PPP and HSP, those are separate registrations. So if you as a producer do supply designated materials under both programs, they will be separate registrations within our system. As part of registration, and as Gabby mentioned, we do have exemptions for the PPP stream specifically. So if the registration does ask you the questions related to whether you may be exempt as a producer, please note that the way the registry system is set up, if you do say that you are exempt, that will automatically end the registration process for you. So just make sure you double check the requirements for all of the exemption criteria before filling out the registration application. In terms of the registration information, the main information we require at the time of registration really is the business start dates, and that really speaks to the official date that you begin operations. The first supply date refers to the initial date that you as a producer are supplying goods into the province. And depending on whether it's the PPP application or the HSP application, we just want to get a sense of the type of designated materials that you do supply into the province. At time of registration, we won't be asking for specific volumes for either material streams. This is really just an indication of the materials that you are planning to submit into the province. And it is only when supply reporting happens in June of the following year of 2024, that's when we actually ask for the specific volume of material that you supply into the province. And finally, we just need to understand if you are part of a franchise or not, as part of the regulation does ask for the franchisee, for the franchisor to register on behalf of the franchisee. So once you've provided us these basic registration information, the rest of the application really just look at whether you are planning on using a pro to help you with meeting your obligations or not. Within the registration, so you can either specify you are working with a pro at time of registration. So if you say no, then really your registration is complete. You can review the information you've provided, and that is the end of the registration process. If you do decide to work with a pro, you can select the pros that you would like to work with as part of registration. So for each, so when you select a pro, you can either indicate whether there are some producer responsibilities that you are planning on retaining. So for example, supplier management report, you can indicate that you might be fulfilling these obligations yourself, or you can choose the pros that you would like to delegate these reporting obligations to. Under the search within our system, we will only display registered and approved pros within the EPR system. So if you do work with other pros in their jurisdictions and you don't see their name on that list, it's most likely because they have not either applied or been approved by the Alberta EPR system, within the Alberta EPR system. If you do intend to work with a pro, but you're not sure which pro yet, you can also indicate that within the registry and fill in that information at a later time. So I just want to expand a bit more on what that delegation process looks like. So there is a few steps that happens both within our registry system and outside. So as you saw earlier, at the time of registration or later on in ARMA Connect, you can make that request to work with a pro that's approved and registered with ARMA. When you make that request, the pro will get notified that you as a producer is interested in working with them to fulfill their obligations under the EPR system in Alberta. Then you will kind of negotiate with the pro, and this is the offline process, to kind of come to an agreement on what they're delegating, what you're delegating to them, and kind of what that agreement looks like. Once that's confirmed, the pro would actually come into the specific request for a producer, and they would input the details into the system, such as the service time period, so the start dates, a minimum, and they can put in an end date if they choose. What reporting obligations they are fulfilling on behalf of the producers, so whether supplier management reporting. And we also need a proof of the agreement, so whether that is the agreement itself or the attestation. And once the pro provide us with all of that information, that kind of enables the two-way confirmation where the producer has requested the relationship and the pro confirmed that relationship in our system. And when it comes time for the supply management reporting, depending on how the relationship is set up within our system, that is who will receive the reports that they need to fill in order to fulfill the obligations. And with that, I will pass it over to Gabby to talk about some of the next steps for producers.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Victor. So on this slide, you can see that after registration, pros will need to confirm each agreement that has been made between producers and pros. And this is all done through our ARMA Connect system. Again, we've tried to make the system as simple and user-friendly as possible for everyone. So we'll go to the next slide. We want to make sure that everyone is well supported throughout the system. So all 4 stakeholder groups, some of the key supporting resources that apply to the folks on this webinar will be the registration procedure. It contains all of the detailed information related to the requirements of registration in our EPR system. So please take a look at that. Maybe before you go in to register or during the process, open it up if you have any questions. Other resources that we will have include a material guide. So this will have a breakdown of each designated material as well as examples for the PPP stream. So take a look at this, and we will also have one for the HSP stream, of course. So again, another useful resource for this group, as well as a verification procedure. So this is the framework for how supply and management reporting needs to be done in the province. This will be a very useful tool for you, and I encourage you to take a look at it as well. Now, one of the things that we have noticed in webinars is that there are some frequently asked questions. So we thought we would take you through those before closing the webinar and opening things up for your questions that you might have. So I'll go through those. We'll go to the first one. When do producers need to register by? So existing producers of designated materials under EPR in Alberta will be required to register with ARMA as a producer by March 1st, 2024. Joining a pro that operates in Alberta does not mean that the producer is registered in Alberta. Producers must still be registered with ARMA directly. Again, that's in our ARMA Connect system. We'll go to the next FAQ here. Is a producer that is already registered with ARMA for the electronics, paint, tires, or used oil program required to register? Again, great question. Registration with ARMA to report as a supplier in any of Alberta's stewardship programs is independent from the EPR related obligation to register and report. So definitely, even if you are already registered in these other stewardship programs, please do make sure that you are also registering as a PPP or HSP producer as per the regulations. A producer can use the same ARMA Connect account and add a new registration for the PPP and or HSP material streams under EPR, and additional users may be given access. So again, ARMA Connect is a great system. We've received a lot of positive feedback, so we wanted to use it for EPR as well, but it does require separate registration. And upon registration, if you have any questions, please do contact our team here. We're happy to provide support. We'll go to the next question. Is there a deadline to register with a pro? There's no deadline for a producer to decide on working with a pro or not, nor selecting which pro. However, there is a hard deadline for the submission of a verification plan, and that is April 1st, 2024. So, and for PPP, and October 1st, 2024 for HSP. So I'll just repeat that. So in terms of the deadline for submitting a verification plan, it's April 1st, 2024 for PPP and October 1st, 2024 for HSP. To comply with this obligation by the deadline, a producer may join a pro that is submitting a verification plan for a common collection system on behalf of their member producers, or submit their own alternative collection plan. And if a producer has decided to work with a pro, the delegation relationship must be documented in ARMA's registry portal through your account. We'll go to the next question. When is the first supply report due? This is a question that comes up frequently. So verified supply data is to be provided for 2022 and 2023, one report for each year, by June 30th, 2024, as part of the annual reporting. As outlined in the bylaws posted in September, producers are required to provide verified supply data for the prior year, 2022, as part of registration. And this is within our bylaws under sections 2.7G and 2.7I. To simplify the initial registration process, this more detailed requirement was deferred from the time of registration and shifted to June. So we just wanted to, again, make things as simple as possible for you and wanted to provide you with as much time as possible to provide this information. So again, the deadline is June 30th, 2024. And we have one final question that I'll take you through. Do I need to sign up with a pro? No, producers are not required to sign up with a pro. Producers can absolutely meet their regulatory requirements on their own. If using a pro, producers can also decide on which requirements to use a pro to help them meet their needs. So such as supply reporting, participation in the common collection system, material management reporting. So producers can work with pros to determine what this looks like, and pros registered with ARMA will be posted on our website. So we already have a number of pros who are up on our website. So, and actually it's a good time to mention our website. We've tried to put a lot of great information for all of the 4 stakeholder groups. Please go to the Alberta Recycling Management Authority website, take a look at our section on EPR, and we have lots of FAQs and other resources for each stakeholder group. And on that note, if there's something that you feel would be helpful that might be missing, please connect with our EPR team and let us know. We're happy to add it to the website. And if you have the question, probably other people do as well. And with that, I think we're moving over to questions. So I'll pass the floor back to Alana.
Thank you, Gabby. That was fantastic. I will dive into the questions because there are a number of ones coming in and the team's been answering them on the side. So the first one that came in, where can I find in writing the definition of producer? Ed verbally gave the information, but it was too fast for me to process whether my company is or is not. For example, my company sells car parts, like batteries, to consumers and users. We source those batteries from warehouses in Alberta and further abroad. How do I know if my company is a producer?
Sure. This is a really, really great question, folks. And so the definition of a producer is held within the regulations. You can refer to the regulation and see this definition of a producer. As well, it's worth mentioning that all of our webinars are up on our website. So you can always take a look at our webinars. We've had a couple. This is our 3rd webinar. So please take a look at the other webinars that might apply to you as well.
Thank you, Gabby. Next question, is Alberta regulating packaging produced by the ICI sector at this time or in a future year?
Thank you very much. So in terms of EPR for Alberta, the regulation does not cover the ICI sector. So EPR in Alberta at this time is focused on residential premises only.
Thank you. Next question, are there or will there be guidelines for what is required in a verification plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So the bylaw currently outlines what's required in the verification plan. But generally speaking, the verification plan should demonstrate that producers has arrangements in place to meet its obligations to collect and manage designated materials. So for further details, please refer to Section 12 in the PPP bylaw or Section 11 in the HSP bylaw. And we have both bylaws posted on our website. And the verification plan will be available at some point for as well. We're just in the consultation phase with some of our key stakeholders before we release the verification.
Thank you. If we don't know if we will use a pro, are we able to register? That one's for Victor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I had my camera off. Yeah, so a producer can register in the system even if they do not know at the time of registration whether they will use a pro or not. So at time of registration, you can either say no, I don't plan on using a pro and add a pro later, or they can say yes, but I don't know which one, and you can add them later. So the system is flexible that you can add a pro at any point, even after you register.
Thank you. If we bought paper from, say, Staples, did they not or the manufacturer not pay into the system? It seems funding is coming from many producers, of which could be perceived as a double dip system. Just how much are the actual manufacturers of product contributing to program? Just curious.
Sure, this is a great question. So the producer hierarchy is laid out in the EPR regulation, and it's intended to minimize multiple producers paying into the EPR for the same product. To your point, the brand holder is the key deciding factor. So if a manufacturer of the product is creating similar products for multiple brands, then each specific brand will need to report into the system.
Next question. Will communities need to negotiate contracts with multiple pros to cover both PPP and HSP? Is there a pro who can manage both, or who would be able to manage both?
Another great question. So all registered pros can be found on the ARMA website, as mentioned. There are no registered pros operating in both programs at this time. So you would be looking at different pros for PPP and HSP. And again, take a look at our website and you will see the conditionally accepted pros listed there.
Next question. I'm wondering if books are covered in PPP or exempt.
This is a good question. It's come up a few times. So books are exempt within the regulation.
Next question. Will there be guidelines for collection and management plans? And if so, when can we expect them to be public?
Thanks for asking this question. It's something important for everyone to know. So there absolutely will be guidelines for you. We are currently engaging with stakeholders on this to ensure that we have feedback from across the system on the draft collection and management plan, and look forward to sharing that with you as soon as possible. And as our policies and procedures are completed, they're all posted on our website. So if you take a look at our website, you can see the bylaws, of course, the regulation, the oversight agreement, and any key documents, as well as webinars that we've produced. And as the policies and procedures are completed, they're also posted on our website.
Sounds good. The next question, can industry or sector calculators or conversion factors be used when determining supply?
Great question. So producers will have the ability to calculate how they determine their own supply. What matters for us here at ARMA really is the verification of those calculations. So there is a third-party verification requirement when producers are submitting their supply reports. So that third-party verifier will look at the calculations or the factors that you've used and make sure that that is an accurate reflection of the supply. So really what we look for is kind of like how what that third-party verification talked about, the factors used, and we do have the ability to also inspect if necessary, but industry can definitely use their own conversion factors.
Next question, will there be more information available about contamination fines and who will be responsible for those, or who would be responsible for those?
Sure. Thanks for asking this question. So this would be part of the agreements that you would be engaged in with a pro and service provider. So this extends beyond the scope of ARMA.
Thank you, Gabby. Next question. Is an organization that prints branded literature, are they a producer regardless if they exceed the material threshold and or revenue threshold?
I think maybe just a slight, I'll kind of go by the assumption of what I think the question is asking, but and like when we say literature, I know there was a question earlier about books. So maybe if you can email us this question with the specific example, we just don't want to give you the wrong answer here because depending what you mean by literature, that might kind of influence our answer. So please email us at epr@albertarecycling.ca and we can definitely get that question answered.
Thank you. And then if we don't know if we'll use a pro and we answer positively or negatively, you appear to be saying we can change. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if you say yes or no, you can always change it after the fact. So as a producer, once you register, there is kind of like we call it a homepage where you can kind of adjust like your reporting delegations. So you can adjust whether you are going to be doing some of the obligations on your own, or you can request relationship with a pro if you choose. So when you request a relationship with a pro, that kind of two-way verification still happens where the pro will get a notification saying, hey, this producer is interested in working with you. Please work with them to see if you want to have an agreement set up. So that can happen anytime after registration. Yeah.
And a follow-up back to the question about literature, and we're doing this a bit quite live now, Victor. For clarification, I ask because we have to agree to all the terms and conditions, which includes agreeing to the following, in quote, the applicant represents and warrants that all information provided to ARMA in this application and in all documents required by virtue of the applicant's registration with ARMA or by virtue of the requirements of law are true and accurate. That was in response to the branded literature question.
Sorry, did you mean the pro question or to the literature one?
That was a follow-up detail or expansion of the question around is an organization that prints branded literature as they are a producer regardless if they exceed the material threshold and or revenue threshold.
Okay, yeah, I think we'll just have to take that one offline, Alana. Thanks.
Yeah, all good. So we'll circle back, or the team will circle back to that respondent with that question. With once the team has found the information for you. Next question, what verification standard are you expecting the pros to use to conduct verification?
So our verification plan will kind of lay out a lot of this in great detail, but there are standard questions we do expect to see depending on the verification, whether it's for a supply report within PPP or supply report within HSP, or if it's the management report. So each report for each program will have different questions we expect to be answered within the verification of the third-party verification of the report. So it will be a bit different, but it doesn't have to be a pro. The third-party verifier needs to be there is a list of individuals that can be a third-party verifier, but third-party verification really speaks to a professional standard. So for example, accountants and engineers, they can be a third-party verifier, and they can be within your organization or within a pros organization, but the main thing is that they have some of the designation as outlined in the verification requirements. So they are a bit different, and we'll certainly share the verification plan once it's ready to be published.
Thanks, Victor. It's going to give it a couple seconds for some other questions that we see coming in. The next question that we have is, with only one PPP Pro currently, how is fair agreements being addressed to avoid a monopoly?
I can take that one. So the regulation states who can participate as a pro in this province, and so we're following that. And basically, you have to be a non-for-profit entity that enters into the marketplace, and you cannot be affiliated with any sort of processing facility in any way, shape, or format. So, with at this point in time, we have pros that have submitted applications to come to the province. We're looking at them right now, and they're going through a proper due diligence. So we can't guarantee if there'll be a monopoly, if there'll be multiple pros in each program, but it is an open program, and anyone who actually fits the criteria can participate. So we can't really speak to the monopoly side of things, but we can tell you that it's an open program, and if a pro fits the criteria, they can operate.
Thanks, Ed. Next question. The April 1, 2024 deadline seems quite tight if ARMA is still developing policies. Pros and producers will be challenged to negotiate an agreement and conduct internal reviews and sign-offs if the requirements are not yet determined. Is the state flexible?
Sure, this is a great question, and the timelines are tight, and they have been tight throughout this journey. So the date is unfortunately a regulatory date. ARMA does not have the ability to move it. We definitely do recognize the tight timelines, and the April 1st timeline is fast approaching. As such, we've decided not to require a comprehensive plan. So really, this will be a high-level plan, and it will have some minimum requirements, of course, of how the pro and producer will meet its obligations. But again, it will be high-level, recognizing that the timelines are very tight for all of us operating within this EPR system.
Thank you. Next question. Did I hear correctly that industry and sector calculators are conversion factors or conversion factors be used when determining supply for HSP products?
Yeah, I can take that one. So within our verification procedure, specifically for HSP, we do have conversion factors that producers can use, but if they want to use their own factors for determining supply, they can certainly do that. But it kind of goes back to that verification that there must be a third-party verification that states that the calculation and conversion factor is in line to the outcome.
Thank you. That's currently our last question right now. We have a couple more minutes before we sign off. We did get to all of the questions actually, and as I mentioned, with this recording, with this webinar being recorded, it'll be archived onto the website, as well as questions that have come in. We'll keep the team will keep building out the FAQs and adding the ones that have been posed onto that one as well. So we'll give it a couple more minutes to see if there's any other. Oh, we do have one.
While we're waiting, I might just jump in to circle back to a question that we talked about before. I know it was Stephen's question on agreeing to the terms of conditions. I just wanted to clarify that when you say that you agree to that and that everything is correct, that's just going to be to the best of your knowledge at the time. So if you're not going to be using a pro, or you don't know if you are, you can change that in the future, and that's not you saying that the information was incorrect, just that it's changed. So no concern at all for you changing your information, and that's not against the terms and conditions. If you have any follow-ups on that, just pop it into the chat and I can comment.
Thank you. Another question, is the PPP recovery rate same as BC at 75%?
I think if you're, I'm going to assume that's referring to the management targets. So the regulation does outline specific management targets per designated material type. So I would just refer to regulation. Unfortunately, I just don't remember all of them off the top of my head. But for paper, flexible, rigid, plastic, metal, and glass, they all have their separate targets.
Thank you, Victor. With that said, we have a minute left. If there are any additional questions as they come up, we definitely encourage everyone on the call here to send it in via email. You can see the QR code on the screen. That just might be easier to take a picture of and scan it. We appreciate everyone that has signed in, and this close to the holiday season, all the engagement and great questions that that have come in today. And thank you to everyone for your time. With that said, have a wonderful rest of the Wednesday, and we'll say good day.